I landed at Grimgate 100 times to improve my fighting off spawn. I've always struggled at contested POIs, and to become a better fighter, this is something I had to overcome. I tracked every game and split them into 7 different sections, each teaching a lesson that helped me improve my fighting and consistently win off spawn with high kills. The first 11% comes from bad aim and 50-50s. Aim is the single most important skill when it comes to fighting off spawn. Maps are limited early on, so more often than not, fights come down to an aim duel and who can hit more shots. You can have the best drops and weapons, but if you can't hit your shots, nothing else matters. Bad aim can make you lose in unlosable situations. It could also cause you to take unnecessary damage and make fights drag out for longer than they need to. Like in this example, I had this player fully boxed but hit a 27 pump and missed my next 2 shots, causing me to lose all my shield. I won the fight, but now I have to go into my next fight with 100 HP because I don't have any extra shield. So if aim is something you struggle with, prioritize working on it before focusing on anything else. You'll notice a huge difference in how much easier fights become when you can hit your shots. 50-50s were also a problem for me early on. I would default to taking bad 50-50s and more often than not die because of it. Unless you have a significant health advantage or need to finish a fight quick, 50-50 should be your last resort. There's almost always a better option that involves less risk and damage. Like in this example, I dropped in the middle of the door and started 50-50 against an auto shotgun. I could have easily moved behind this wall and taken the right hand, which would have led to me taking significantly less damage and most likely win the fight. After a couple of these deaths, I learned that I need to do a better job at using natural cover and movement to create right hands and make myself harder to hit. If you don't understand why you want to take the right hand peek over anything else, it's because the third person camera sits over the right shoulder of your character, meaning when you hold an angle on the right, you can see everything past the wall while still being fully protected. Whereas with the left hand peek, you can't see anything past the wall and have to expose part of your character to see your opponent and get a shot off. So in these situations, I'm using my movement to turn buildings into right hands, making it difficult to get hit while having easy shots on my opponents. As you get deeper into the early game and everyone has mats, majority of fights will turn into box fights. Making bad plays here accounted for 9% of my deaths, and it was usually careless mistakes like making dumb medits or letting opponents just run into my box. I decided to practice box fights in creative to see if that would help translate off spawn, and it definitely did. The situations I found myself in felt way more familiar, and I felt a lot more confident going into fights because I knew what to do from practicing in creative. Every issue I covered so far has been straight up 1v1s, but my biggest struggle and the main contributor to my deaths were third parties. There's certain things you can and can't do once a third party gets involved, and learning to navigate fights with them is the key to winning off spawn. There's a number of different ways third parties could affect a fight, and just chalking a death up to getting third party doesn't allow you to understand how to prevent that from happening in the future. So I split my deaths into 3 categories to help you understand how to minimize the effect of third parties. First and easiest to fix is awareness. Being unaware of my surroundings and tunnel visioning makes up for 11% of my deaths, and the fix is as simple as reminding myself to constantly take note of my surroundings because it's super easy to tunnel vision when you think you have a free kill, and this clip is a perfect example. The next 9% of my deaths were from playing too passive or taking heavy damage. There's no sound a third party loves more than shield cracks and fighting. If they hear shots, they're gonna make their way to them in hopes of cleaning up the fight for some easy kills. In this game, I was in a box fight and the other player had no interest in fighting me. I continued to play extremely safe, which led to no progress. Then the third party rolls up and sprays out all my mats, forcing me to make a desperate play which didn't end well. To prevent this, I knew I needed to play more aggressive to finish fights quicker. A key mistake I was making in these fights was not reading my opponent. I'm taking these safe angles and applying weak pressure in fear of them making a counterplay, but what I failed to pick up on was they had no interest in fighting, which meant I either needed to play more aggressive or disengage, because if we're both playing scared, the third party will clean us up every time. In this fight, I did a good job of noticing that they weren't making any effort to pressure me and reboxing a lot, which let me know I needed to play more aggressive, and I jumped in their box for an easy kill. In a lot of my dragged out box fights, another mistake I was making was not switching up the angle. I would try the same thing over and over and the fight would go nowhere. When I started practicing box fights more, I made sure to play aggressive, that way I could learn what angles I could safely but effectively apply pressure from, and that helped my confidence in box fights, which turned into quicker kills like I mentioned earlier. Something that also led to quicker kills was my aim. Once I started practicing it, I became way more confident in my ability to win aim duels and hit heavy shots, and you could see from this 3-kill sequence the difference it makes when you can hit your shots. And when you're confident in your aim, 50-50 becomes a more viable option to end fights fast. I mentioned earlier that the only times you want 50-50 is when you have a health advantage or need to finish a fight quick. If you have a health advantage, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't even matter how you jump in the box because as long as you hit your shots, you'll kill them. You may not be able to get the health advantage every time, but you could still win by catching them off guard like I did in that fight earlier. By no means is this the safest way to get kills, and if your aim is bad, I don't recommend doing this, but it's undoubtedly the fastest way to end fights quick. You just want to be careful when playing aggressive because although you're trying to avoid third parties, if you slip up and take an overly aggressive peek or take a lot of damage and a third party is nearby, you could easily get cleaned up. I fell victim to this and it makes up for 14% of my deaths. Even when trying to finish fights as quick as possible, third parties are still inevitable, and learning how to use them to your advantage is another important skill to have. All you have to do is position yourself in a way that the third party doesn't have an angle on you. Whether it's boxing up or getting on the opposite side of an opponent, you want the only way that they can impact the fight is by shooting the other player, essentially creating a 2v1. Another important thing is to not be scared of third parties. You have to play cautious around them, but you don't have to play scared. If a third party only tries to fight when the other two players are fighting, I can almost guarantee you they're a bad fighter. They're just looking for a free kill or cleanup because they know they can't fight. In this game, this kid third partied my fight and I barely had match to fight, so I disengaged and came back to fight him and made quick work of him. No two situations with third parties are the same, but as you get more experience in these situations, you'll better learn how to navigate them. The last 12% of my deaths came from losing the 50-50 chest at Grim Gate. This chest is 100% guaranteed and has the best positioning, making for free kills if you get it, but also means everyone tries to go for it. If you even want a chance at the gun, make sure you have auto pickup on and are standing on top of the chest. If you're asking why would I take that risk when I could go for an uncontested chest or weapon, it's because I'm not a bitch. I don't got an answer. But since we're asking questions, can I get a like on the video?
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no.
The last 3% of my deaths come from unfortunate circumstances and, well, other unfortunate circumstances. Now that I covered everything I learned from my deaths, I'm gonna move on to everything I did well to help me win more fights. First is playing aggressive right off the bat. If you get a gun and immediately start fighting, you'll be surprised by how many free kills you could get. Nobody's expecting you to jump on them the second you get a gun. Most people are scrambling to get their first gun and aren't even looking to get in a fight after looting one chest. They may be waiting to get a shotgun or shield before they start to engage, and if you jump on them right away, you can catch them off guard for a free kill. This is something you see pros like Peterbot doing every game. Not only does this result in free kills, but it also saves you time and loot. If you choose to wait until you get a shotgun and shield before pushing, your opponent is also likely going to have a decent amount of loot, causing the fight to take longer and pop shield that you could have had if you just pushed them right off the bat. Another really useful tip is to use whatever you can to your advantage. A lot of items that aren't necessarily viable in mid-game could be useful early on, like cluster clangers and EMPs. You can see in these examples, players are holding these angles, not expecting me to be carrying them, and I get free damage and kills because of it. These kills weren't from the 100 games, but they're perfect examples on how these items could be used off spawn. It doesn't necessarily have to be items either. Anything to give you advantage you should be using. I was landing Grim Gate for these games, so I had access to the dashes and used them to exploit into boxes and pick up free kills. This is another kill that obviously isn't from the 100 games, but you can see that I'm 11 HP and this kid is pushing me. If I use my shotgun or SMG, he's gonna have time to get a shot off and kill me, so I used the one weapon in my inventory that could one-shot him. Obviously it was lucky, but there's no rules to fighting off spawn. Resources are limited, so you have to get creative with whatever you have. Just don't do what this guy did. Oh, okay. Speaking of getting creative, if you ever have a kid lurking in the building and have no idea where they're at, pretend like you're in a fight, and more often than not, they'll come out and you'll be able to kill them. Chances are they aren't that good of fighters since they're waiting on the third party to start fighting. I'm about to put y'all on. This is like a bird call for garbage players. Wait, I tell you. One thing you'll find useful in all fights, but especially off spawn, is pre-fires. There's a lot of situations where players will just try to pressure a spray into your box, and with low mats you could only hold them out for so long, so pre-firing to get them to back off or get counter damage is an important skill to have. Now that I covered everything I learned about fighting off spawn, I'm going to show you my top 3 off spawn, showcasing everything I just talked about. Seeing these examples in a live game should help you get a better understanding on when and where they could be applied. last kill was just a regular fight, which I was able to end relatively easy to get another win. However, I got keyed as I was killing the boss, and I got the shotgun but not the medallion. They ran off with it, but I wasn't counting this as a win until I got it, so I ran down the entire lobby until I got it, and that was just before the final 1v1. There's a lot of good takeaways from this video, but the best advice I could give you to become a better fighter off spawn is to practice to improve through trial and error. Don't worry about your rank or dying a bunch of times. I could have camped every game and got a bunch of 1-kill wins, but that wouldn't have helped me get better. Going into every game looking to improve on my mistakes from the last is what allowed me to become a much better fighter than I was to start. Experience is the best teacher, and you need to make the mistakes yourself so you can get a feel for what works and what doesn't. If you enjoyed or found this video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe and use code HOWL in the item shop. If there's any fighting related topics you want me to cover in the next video, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, I'll catch you guys later.